You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible.
It's been 5 years since this Flint water crisis began, and the problem continues. Last week, the city spilled 2 million gallons of raw sewage into the river. And to add insult to injury, a recent study shows that the number of Flint special needs students has increased by 56% since the water crisis began. Joining me to talk about the growing problem in Flint is Mayor Karen Weaver.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing, Ms. Mayor?
I'm doing just fine.
All right, so can you kind of explain to us what is going on and how has this problem persisted for so long?
Okay, so what is going on in Flint? There are a lot of things going on in Flint. Let me just start by saying one is Flint has made progress. I do want people to know that. We are going to be finished with the lead service line replacement this fall, which is a year ahead of schedule. So that's a really, really good thing. We're working on the restoration, so the roads and the lawns are getting fixed. I'll tell you where our issue still remains and why I am continuing to tell people to stay on bottled and filtered water. The first reason is we haven't completed the lead service line replacement. And until we get all of those lead and galvanized lines out, which I said will be this fall, I will continue to, err on the side of caution. The other thing we've talked about, and I've had this conversation with state government and with federal government. While we can change the pipes and have brand new pipes, we can have our water testing, very well because it is. People's in-home plumbing, people that, just like pipes were old, in-home plumbing and fixtures were old in some homes. And so they were corroded by that water as well. And so when you have your plumbing, your fixtures, your appliances that have been damaged, you still have that potential for lead in your system. And so that's what we've been asking the state and federal government for funding to complete the project. They haven't done that. They started by giving us 4,000 new fixtures. Well, that's a drop in the bucket, and we need more. And they did that the first year, and they stopped, and nothing else ever came. So that's one of the challenges. I also heard you talk about what was going on with the children in Flint and our special education rates going up. And that's something that it's not a surprise when you see what happened when you had lead poisoning to our children, to this community. And that was one of the things we talked about, was we knew there were going to be some cognitive damages to our young kids as a result of this. And we knew it was going to be an increase in special education, in the criminal justice system, and in mental health issues. And that's one of the other things we've talked about. And that is a reason that we've asked for funding for the lead registry. And what we got was 5 years of funding. But people are, we had a public health crisis here in the city of Flint. And we said, we don't know how this is going to play out. Some, we're seeing things right now, but some things may not manifest for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. And that's why it's important for this lead registry to be funded for a long period of time so we can track physical health outcomes, so we can see what kinds of interventions and what kinds of services make a positive difference. And so that's another thing that we're continuing to ask for money from the government for. The federal government gave us 5 years of funding. Well, 1 year is up, so we have 4 years of funding left for this lead registry, which makes no sense for a city that had a public health crisis and is continuing to deal with the public health crisis. So those are some of the things going on.
Well, we've known since the fall of the Roman Empire that lead in water leads to mental and physical health issues for human beings. What do we need to do to get our national candidates, the people running for president? Got 25 people plus running for president right now. How can we get them to take the Flint issue seriously and make it a primary campaign concern? Because Flint is not the only municipality in this country going through this. It's just the most the most public one.
Exactly, and that's what we've said is pay attention to what's going on in Flint, because what happened here, we're a poster child for so many other communities across this country, and you better pay attention to what's going on in here, because it's going to affect, people all across the United States because of this aging, damaged infrastructure, and because people have taken water quality standards for granted for such a long time, and the standards that are in place are old, antiquated, and outdated, and they need to be addressed, and it needs to be taken seriously, because it's like you said, we're not the only one, but we've been the most visible and vocal, and we have said, I've said, don't let us go through a crisis and not learn from us so this never happens again, and that's what they need to do. I don't want them stopping through Flint for a photo op. This is serious, and this is about people, and that's what we have to remember, is to put people and public health and well-being over profit, and that's what hasn't happened.
And, one of the things I think people forget is the genesis of this problem was a consent decree with the state in order to fill a budget shortfall. So to try to save $200 million over the course of 25 years, you diverted from the Detroit water treatment facility to build a new facility for stopgap measure with the Flint River, which resulted in this entire issue, and also the Legionnaires outbreak between 2014 and 2015.
Yeah. Let's not forget we've had 13 deaths as a result of that as well.
And so with that, what should the general public do? How can we pressure officials both on the state level and the federal level to help Flint, help other municipalities that are dealing with this lead issue? Even the federal government didn't hit on the lead issue until, I think, 1991. So we have millions of miles of antiquated lead and iron piping from the 1920s through the 1960s. What can we do as the general public to fix this issue?
You know what? One of the things is we have to speak up, and we have to come out and vote, and that's where we've been lacking as well. We've got to come out and vote, because your vote is your voice, and it matters, and you better watch who you're putting in office. You better pay attention and get involved. That's one of the things that has to happen. Something else is, I'm going to go back to when I was talking about the water quality standards. They're old. When they say, so in Michigan, we went from what was acceptable was 15 parts per billion, and now to 12, and we're supposed to be excited because that's low. That's the lowest there is now. Well, that's not exciting to say the standards are going to be 12 parts per billion. That makes no sense, because we know that is going to damage children. It's going to damage people. It's going to damage seniors, those with compromised immune systems, and we don't know what it does to the rest of us. So we can't go for the status quo. That's the other thing. And then they put unfunded mandates in place where they say, okay, you've got to change all of the lead service lines, but they don't give the municipalities the funding to be able to do that. People said, what did you all do on the private side? Well, we had to sue, so the state, and we had to sue the state to get the funding, and the federal government under the Obama administration gave us $100 million for that. So we were able to go on the private side, but we have to watch out for these unfunded mandates because municipalities can't afford them, and people, when they say, well, that's private, so you have to take care of it, too many families aren't in a position to be able to, pay for that. They're not in that position. And so you're setting cities and places up for failure when you do that.
And so just to close out, because you mentioned you mentioned the part about 15 parts per billion. I think at one point there were some water samples taken in Flint that were between 500 and 13,000 parts per billion when it comes to lead concentrations. Not to mention the manipulation by previous administrations and previous officials when it comes to the testing criteria. I think the EPA standards were that you had to have a six-hour hold before testing in order to make the determination of the parts per billion, and you had local officials who were doing a flush right before the... They were doing flushes,
yeah, they were doing
flushes
and so you
right
have to look at those instructions that are put in place, because they gave out bogus instructions. And the instructions that were given were, well, yeah, when you flush, you are going to get lower levels. And so that's what you have to watch, is how they tell you to do that and putting standards in place for that. There should be a protocol on appropriate flushing, and that's something we've really been talking with our residents and educating them about, because it's important to know when you're getting your testing done, the appropriate way to test to get the right reading. But I do want to touch on something, because, the headlines have read that the city dumped sewage into the Flint River, and that is not what happened. We had a storm here in the city of Flint. We had a rainstorm, and we got inches and inches of rain in a short period of time, and the reservoir at the plant flooded. That was what happened. So it wasn't like it was human waste sewage that got into our water. It wasn't that kind of thing. And we were able to address that because the sewage was already caught. So this was other, so what happens when there's a flood? And that was treated. So I don't want it to sound like the city of Flint was negligent and dumped waste into the Flint River, because with everything we've been through, I really don't want that to be the headline. But that was what they put out there. That was how the media put that out there, and that was not what happened. It was Mother Nature having a storm in the city of Flint, and that was something that we weren't prepared for. We weren't prepared for that amount of rain in that short period of time, and the flooding took place. So that was what happened with that. We've just spent millions and millions of dollars, like I think it was $36 million, cleaning the Flint River. So I just wanted to, get that out there as well.
Well, I think it's very important for people to understand that now Flint is in good hands, under good leadership. There are people who are competent and in charge. I want to thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Keep us updated on what we can do in the rest of the country to help Flint and help the water situation there. Thank you, Mayor Weaver.
And keeping this message out there helps us all. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And so do the residents of this city.
Thank you so much. Mayor Karen Weaver from Flint, Michigan. Joining us. Thanks. Joining us now on our panel is political and social analyst Dr. Cleo Monago, and also former chair of the National Bar Association, PAC, attorney A. Scott Bolden. How you doing, guys?
Good, real good.
All right. So on this Flint issue, why is it this has not penetrated and percolated up to being a national issue? We've had 2 presidential debates so far, 8 hours of conversation, and I don't think we've heard anybody even mention the issues of Flint, because for every Flint, there's also a Gary, there's also an Atlanta, there's also a Baltimore, where you have similar issues, similar piping and infrastructure issues, but no one is talking about it on a national level. It seems like when it's just us, it's just us.
There must be a plan for it. Flint can't catch a break. Mayor Weaver is absolutely right about this flooding piece, because the headline said sewage dumped into the Flint River. The reality is that the residents of Flint, they don't get their water any longer from the Flint River.
Yeah, that was a temporary...
It's a temporary piece that went south, that never worked out. But then they readjusted, and they went back to getting their water from Lake Superior, which is off the, I was about to say off the coast of Detroit, but it runs through Detroit in their deal. They are talking about it when you talk broadly about climate change and infrastructure, but not specifically about Flint or any of the other urban centers. And it really is a form of environmental injustice, if you will, environmental discrimination, because even the DNC had a chance to have a debate on climate change and the environment, and they voted that down at their recent meetings last week. And so it costs to take care of poor people and to provide good health care and environmental standards and all the things that all of our communities deserve, need, and want. But poor people, it costs a lot. And nobody really, whether it's public funds or private funds, just based on how they allocate funds, nobody wants to spend the money to take care of poor people, whether it's water, environment, health care, insurance, you name it. And that's why it's not at the forefront of the presidential debate right now. It should be.
Absolutely. Dr. Monago, we had a situation where May 4th, 2016, President Obama went to Flint, said the water was safe, got himself a glass of water, drank it on stage.
That was dangerous.
Yeah,
Oh, it looked dangerous.
Well, it's not that it was dangerous, but it was political malpractice, because basically he was telling the people there that the water is safe, and now we got a 56% spike in special education because they believed the president who said the water was safe. So
the damage had been done already.
Yeah, those pipes have been corroding for years, and for the president to say the water is safe and drink the water, who knows what the lasting effect of that is? And we haven't seen anything better with President Trump. So what should we do when it seems like both parties don't care?
Well, that Obama went to Flint and said the water was drinkable happened around the time that this issue was in the press all the time. It was a hot issue. I think the reason why he went there and that was talked about, did all that, is because he wanted to look good and taking advantage
The
of it.
feds did give them plenty of money. Gave them a lot of money, not plenty of money.
mean Flint?
But a lot of money. Gave Flint a lot of money.
Right.
He did keep his commitment on that. And they've replaced these pipes.
Well, that's true.
They've got a lot more work to do.
That's true,
And
but
they
I'm
did that
talking about-
redeal with the Lake Superior. So there has been some progress made.
Sure, but what's not true is that the water is good. That's not what's true. And I think that Obama got caught up in the opticalness, if you will, of it all. And this gets back to your original question regarding why didn't it come up recently in the debates? Well, it's not the topic. Unfortunately, these
Not
presidents...
sexy.
Right. Unfortunately, these presidential candidates follow whatever is media savvy. And that's why they talk about reparations, which they never talked about before. We had just had this commission meeting with Congress, and now it's a hot topic. So unfortunately, as opposed to following what's right for the people and being concerned about the poor and being concerned about people's lives, people are concerned about being liked enough to get the popular vote.
You know, remember one other thing, too. There are a number of civil lawsuits still pending over this. And so whether they're suing the state or suing private sector participants in what occurred in Flint, those cases, and there's several of them, and they're class actions, are making their way through the federal and the state judicial system in Michigan. So arguably help is on the way. The criminal indictments, be honest with you, those were dismissed by the judge, and rightfully so. That was a very, very high standard, going to be difficult to reach. But the real civil justice in all of this has to come through the federal and state courts, and I think it will. And when they do pay up and pay out, including the insurance carriers, at least there will be some modicum of compensation or a lot of compensation to make this as close to right as possible.
I think we noticed that at the very beginning of Mayor Weaver's conversation, she wanted to get the record straight, let us know there was progress being made.
Okay.
But I think it's important real quickly, Robert, to point out the fake news angle. I mean, I heard all over the country, national news, that sewage was flowing into the drinking water of Flint,
was just dead
Michigan.
wrong.
And that was fake news and a lie, and I think she took it personally. It might be also because she's a black woman running a city and she doesn't want that kind of reputation because it's racist, and it may or may not be racist that they lied and claimed that the water is not only full of lead now, but it's full of human sewage.
But that worked
And
for
that's
the
not even-
Republican narrative, though. That headline worked for the Republican narrative.
Well, I think it's a bipartisan failure because it was a failure under Obama. It's been a failure under Trump. You had local officials who were Democratic, state officials who were Republicans, and all of it didn't work. So I think it's important for us to understand that.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, November 7th through 11th, I want y'all to join me in Cabo, Mexico for the Life Luxe Jazz experience, folks. It's going to be an amazing, top-notch music and upscale destination. The weekend-long event is going to be held at the Omnia Day Club in Los Cabos. Ooh, looks real good. Of course, nestled in the Sea of Cortez and the celebrity playground of Los Cabos, Mexico. The Life Luxe Jazz experience offers a huge event for jazz aficionados, and folks are going to have food, going to have music, all those fun things, luxury accommodations, you name it, taking place, including golf and spa, health and wellness options for all of you. You got big names in entertainment for the second annual Life Luxe Jazz experience. Among those folks who have been, of course, confirmed, comedian actor Mark Curry, my frat Gerald Albright, Alex Bouillon, Raul Madon, Incognito, Pieces of a Dream, my favorite Kirk Whalum, Average White Band, gospel artist Donnie McClurkin, Shalea, Roy Ayers, Tom Brown, Ronnie Laws, and Ernest Quarles. An amazing lineup of folks that you want to be able to check out, folks. So you're going to come on down to Cabo. And in fact, we're going to be doing Roland Martin Unfiltered there on the 7th and the 8th, that Thursday and Friday, right there from Cabo. It's going to be a phenomenal opportunity. Those of y'all who are in, of course, the cold areas in the country, yeah, come on, give me the beach back. In the cold areas of the country, come on down to Cabo for those days in November. It's going to be fantastic. For more information, please visit the website at lifeluxejazz.com, lifeluxejazz.com. I would love to see you there. My birthday is right about 3 days after that, so we can also make it a birthday celebration. And so it's going to be a phenomenal experience. Go to lifeluxejazz.com if you're looking for a great opportunity. Got some great packages running anywhere from $1,300 up to $2,000. But again, jazz concerts, food, music. We're going to have a grand time. And see, there'll be one of those folks who go, dang, I wish I had gone. You got an opportunity. So go to lifeluxejazz.com right now for all of the details. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.